My talk today is about unstructured data in the main, which happens to be the driving force behind GenAI and will be for AGI. We are coming from the perspective of servicing very, very large data sets at very large banks for primarily information governance for the last 26 years. So much of our experience is with emails and files, file shares, Bloomberg, SMS text, chats, and so forth. And as you well know from the financial sector, the regulatory and e-discovery forces are quite considerable. So I'll be talking about those too and relating them to GenAI. On unstructured data, this is your primary sources of unstructured data at any financial institution. And you'll excuse me if my comments focus primarily on the problems faced by very large banks, because that's been our experience in the last 26 years. A lot of it is in the collab suites, and then of course in the IMs and chats and so forth. One thing that people haven't really noted is that all of this has one thing in common: it's all human. 100% generated by humans for humans. And as such, since all the banks already have the obligation to collect and harness and analyze all of this, you can also repurpose this to form, for the first time, organizational memory and knowledge. This actually extends far beyond today's GenAI and into the future, into AGI. You might want to keep that in mind. Obviously, this has already come to pass because the last 20 years, we've seen everyone focus on this. Every time something happens that's significant, a crisis, a scandal, litigation, all the regulators, litigators, and management focus on it. If you recall, on Jan 7th, the day after, the first thing they went to was the SMS text by the Secret Service. Since we already have the obligation as banks to track all of these media, based on that, there's not a whole lot you don't know about every human participant and their dynamics. It is sometimes a little bit scary, but the data may know more about you than you think you know of yourself. So everyone's kind of gotten into the unstructured data space, but it takes a fair bit of understanding to know what to do there. For example, this is the data lake concept that's often propagated and championed by many players in the field. Structured and unstructured is roughly between one ratio of 1 to 5. However, what is probably skipped over is that unstructured data is human, and therefore, by that nature, it's radioactive. What do I mean by radioactive? It can come back to haunt you if you don't control it. If you remember a few months ago on Capitol Hill, this chap was sweating on the stand. And based on some content that was over a decade old, his company may well be broken up just based on that. When you construct your strategy, understand that you probably need to get a sign-off from the chief legal officer or the chief compliance officer or the chief records officer or the chief privacy officer. The rest of it, probably you don't want to make a copy of it accessible. You probably want to make it a virtual data repository where there's no original. That way, if you get hit by a subpoena, you can simply say, sorry, I don't have it. the original isn't there. If it is there, watch out. As I said, we service the very large banks, the largest ones, including the likes of Citibank and Wells Fargo and JPMC and so forth. I'd like to share with you a recent comment from the CEO of one of them, JPMC.
The hardest part's the data, which you know. Yeah. It isn't the AI. It's not the machine learning. It's not the generative AI. It's getting your people to use it properly, but it's the data. I mean, I forgot the number, but it dwarfs everything. So getting the data in the form that it could be usable is the hard part, because it's in different formats and completely unstructured. Like just conversations that people had, or on call center or something like that. But now we're being able to access all of them to do a better job. We now spend about $2 billion on AI. We have something like 600 actual in-use cases. Some are really important, some are more minor. That number will probably double next year and maybe triple. It'll just keep on growing.
A couple of things to note, and that is they've come quite a long ways on their journey. And he said that unstructured data is really hard. And the last one is that they're pumping away at over 600 use cases. I'd like to take a quick survey to see the state of the art of AI implementation. How many of you have got over 100 use cases? If you raise your hands. How many of you have over 500 use cases? How about 200 use cases? No. So most of you are beginning on the journey. One thing about JPMC is that they very much prefer a platform approach, because otherwise you're stuck with silos, and they prefer a platform that can replicate across. That's how they get to 600. But I'd like to dwell a few moments on why he said unstructured data is so difficult. And this kind of gives you a hint. The first order of business is that you got to access the unstructured data. And you need to access all of it, not just slices of it. Two is that you need to access all types of data. Just doing one and repeating it for another is just inefficient and also problematic in ineffectiveness. So you need to get all the types of data. The third one is that you need to scale. And for here, I think most people misunderstand the scaling requirements. We're talking about tens and tens of petabytes, and in particularly the big banks. Would it surprise you to know that they have more unstructured data documents than even Google does? Except that the management requirement in the bank is a whole lot more difficult than at Google, because Google is just best efforts. Here, you lose a single document, you could be toast. So that's the scaling issue. The third one is that this is a new innovation. Because it's so darn expensive and so radioactive, it would be nice if you could actually have the option to either keep a copy for high-value documents or no copy for low-value documents, but extract all the essence of the documents so that you can use it for GenAI and AGI. So that's the in-place that came in. And because in-place came in, this is what many of the big banks realized when we deployed. The benefits are massive. Number one, your cost, the storage cost directly, goes down by 90%. So that allows you to keep a whole lot more data for a lot longer. Number two, your risk also goes down significantly, because if they hit you with a subpoena for it, you say, I'm sorry, don't have it. Originals are not here. The last one is serendipitous, and that is your speed to data analytics. Because you do not, if you extract all the data, and you don't have to go back to the original SharePoint or 365 or what have you, your time to data analytics is sped up by 1,000 times. That's a massive, massive differentiation. It changes the paradigm of analytics. Now, along with the obligations of information governance, you have compliance, which has mostly been covered by silos of the last 20 years. And then another silo is e-discovery. Another silo would be records and lifecycle management. Another silo would be privacy, GDPR, CCPA. And these have all been siloed, very inefficient, and basically at cross purposes. So the way to go forward is to actually unify them into one, so that one motion does it all. And not only that, go further and unify the data platform, the data schema, so that you just keep one copy. That also reduces your cost, which then means that you can actually combine the cost of all of these silos and actually save money while increasing your capabilities. Now, the Gen data feed, you have one huge benefit. It's now governed, and you have access to 100% of the data. No more sampling. Number two, you have also time to analytics speeded up by 1,000-fold. And thirdly, you now have additional capabilities such as SLM. I think pretty soon we'll have micro language models. And you have RAG to augment and reduce your cost and make it more relevant. You also can apply the data guardrails. Instead of guardrails by algorithms, data is a whole lot more direct and faster to get to it. If you guard your privacy data, it's unlikely that your marketing algorithms will violate the privacy laws. And then you can also start to untrain Gen AI, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. So you can afford to have both copies and no copies, archive or in place, and then you should put it all on one data platform. I think you'll find that the larger institutions are going this route. Quick run through in terms of what actually happens out in the field. Most of analytics today and e-discovery and Gen AI, it happens in the sandbox. The sandboxes are fundamentally limited. It's slow, it's sampling, you always have sampling errors. Number two, a lot of your labor is wasted, a lot of your time is wasted, and if you don't like it, rinse and repeat. And lastly, there's no governance in it. That cannot, today is the Wild West, that cannot continue. So what to do? Well, you don't have to stay with the sandbox. Jump out of the sandbox and do the beach. This way, all of the sampling errors, scrubbing, and governance are already solved automatically. Now, instead of having just a small little sample of, let's say, what you're looking for, red shells or smoking guns, instead, if you scour the beach, you can have a pile of shells, your target shells, 300 feet high if you want. That's a completely different paradigm. What should you do? Well, number one, don't invest in duplicating the beach, virtualize the beach. Number two, start small. For example, someone looking at product, this is an actual case, product liability and intellectual property, started just with the R&D department, the product management department, and the overseas R&D department. 2,000 people versus 100,000. Put it all into a virtual repository, and then feed the sandbox and get all the feeds that you want. You like it, and then expand it to the rest of the data. Start small. One takeaway from the big bank I was talking about earlier is that they had a huge problem. Here's a full use case. They had data scattered all over the place around the world, and it was siloed, so every country had their own silos. They had no idea what was in there. They had no idea what was problematic. They had no idea how to fix it. They had no idea how to life cycle it. And so the first thing was to actually consolidate the management, and then to actually cut costs by reducing it to in place. and then do all of the governance together, and then use the access to 100% of the data to feed your GenAI sandbox, as I said, 1,000 times faster. And then, of course, you can now implement your life cycle, defensible disposition, for those of you sensitive to that, and also incorporate governance and GenAI together. All of these are capabilities that are not available in the Microsoft platform, so you need to augment them there. I'll spend the next few minutes in maybe giving you a few good hints. One is that when you get to 100% insights or capture, the value of your insights grows like a snail's pace, but when you get to the 99%, 100%, something miraculous happens. The value of your insights goes like a hockey stick. And the reason is because your insights from data that exists is that low, but when you have 100% capture, you can get insights from data that does not exist. Because then, instead of dealing with this is a partial capture. There's only so much insight you can get from the footprints. But if you have 100% capture, you can definitively say, yep, these data footprints are missing. And therein lies all of the fraud detection and so forth, the anti-money laundering and so forth. I'll spare you the details of the Sherlock Holmes, the dog that didn't bark. But the next thing is that you can also untrain GenAI by instead of building a monolithic model, do it in puzzle pieces and then replace the puzzle pieces with GenAI. Third is, and this is important, when you're deleting your unstructured data, emails and files, stop. Wait. See if you can actually do something with it, because once you delete it, it's gone. Instead, before deletion, if you can use a process to capture the essence of the documents and then throw the originals, you can then go to your deletion, but keep the data for future use. And lastly, the other lessons learned. Don't apply structure to unstructured. They're very, very different. Copies. In structure, you make all the copies galore, and unstructured, you do not make a single copy if you can help it. Lineage, structured, you're worried about that. In unstructured, you're not. Be careful about swapping legacy for new technologies, because in governance, there's a problem. There's a lack of trust between two parties, the litigants or the regulator and the regulated. So do not throw away your deterministic technologies like search. You need both AI/ML searches and deterministic search, because when you're asked to produce, they want deterministic. They don't want a black box. They want explainability. Lastly, look twice at agentic RAG, especially the impact on cost and performance. It can make a huge difference. Basically, this is the exercise of rebuilding or building for the first time your organizational memory and knowledge. It goes way beyond GenAI. And I'll just close with a scene from Hollywood. We're not too far away from this shot from, what was that Tom Cruise movie? We'll have all of the data at our fingertips and near real time. So that's the summary of my presentation. And if you want, please stop by our booth. We can answer any questions you might want.